Okay, you're here because you want the real story fast. So let's dive in. Today, we're really digging into Bitcoin's latest price moves. And the big one is $100,000 actually happening.
Yep, we've got this market analysis article. It's pretty detailed. It's going to be our guide. The plan is basically to break down what's pushing the price around and look at the arguments, for and against hitting that big $100K number.
All right, so first off, the sheer amount of trading is, well, it's huge. Just in the last day, Bitcoin's been bouncing around, what, $95,900 up to $97,300.
Easily, yeah.
And even in the last hour, it's been kind of stuck between $96,800 and $97,000, give or take. And get this, the total market cap is sitting at $1.92 trillion and nearly $28 billion traded in just 24 hours. That's a lot of interest.
Oh, absolutely. That sustained activity is definitely something the article flags. And if you look at the bigger picture, the daily chart, what's really standing out is that strong move upwards. Bitcoin broke clean out of that 74K to 84K zone it was
Right,
in.
where it was just going sideways for a bit.
Exactly. And that breakout felt significant, like maybe a real shift after that consolidation. Like all that buying pressure just got unleashed.
Totally. And it wasn't just a little nudge, was it? The analysis says it surged all the way to $97,470. And crucially, it had more buying volume behind it. That tells you people were serious, right?
Right, real conviction there. And the technical guys in the article, they're even talking about a possible continuation pattern, something like an ascending triangle maybe forming just before this latest jump.
An ascending triangle. Remind us quickly what that signals.
Sure. It's usually seen as bullish. You get this rising line underneath acting as support and a flat top line as resistance. When price breaks above that flat top, especially with volume, it often suggests the uptrend will continue. So seeing that potentially before the breakout adds a bit more weight to the bullish side.
Okay, makes sense. So right now, what are the absolutely key price levels we need to keep an eye on? Where's the battleground?
Good question. The article points to support like a floor down around $88,000. That's where buyers have shown up before. And then the ceiling, the immediate resistance, is really close, right near $97,500.
97.5. Wow. Okay, so that's the immediate wall it needs to break.
Precisely. That's the level where sellers might step in more strongly.
And what about entry points? If someone's thinking about getting in, did the analysts suggest a strategy?
They did float an idea. They suggested watching for a pullback, a little dip, maybe into the $92,000 range. They felt that could be a lower risk spot to buy.
And the targets from there?
Short term, they're looking right back up at that $97,500 resistance. In medium term, well, that's the $100,000 goal.
Okay, daily chart covered. But the analysis went deeper, right, into shorter time frames. Let's zoom in. What's the 4-hour chart showing?
Yeah, zooming in helps. On the 4-hour, that uptrend is still really clear. You see the classic pattern.
Yeah.
Higher highs and higher lows, just step by step upwards. And interestingly, that zone around $94,000 to $95,000, that used to be resistance, a ceiling price struggled with. Now it seems to have flipped. It's acting like a micro support zone. A new floor.
Ah, the old ceiling becomes the new floor. Classic technical analysis concept.
Exactly. Traders watch for that. And the volume patterns on this time frame are also constructive, as they say, meaning you see these spikes in volume when the price moves up, lots of buying interest. But when it pulls back slightly, the volume tends to be lower. Less selling pressure, which is generally seen as positive for the trend.
Gotcha. And wasn't there another pattern mentioned? Something small before the latest push?
Yeah, a little cup and handle formation right before that move to $97,470. Another pattern that often hints at, more upside potential.
So still looking bullish on the 4-hour.
Pretty much. The analysis suggests if price dips back to test that 95K zone again, and crucially, if the selling volume is low during that test, that could be another buying opportunity. Targeting $97,500 first, maybe higher if the momentum holds.
Okay, let's get even closer. The 1-hour chart. What's the minute-by-minute, well, hour-by-hour story?
Yeah, pretty much. The 1-hour chart shows this really sharp V-shaped bounce back from that low around $92,946.
A V shape. What does that usually imply?
Often suggests something called a bear trap. Sellers might have pushed it down hard, thinking the trend was breaking, but then buyers jumped in aggressively, trapping the sellers who bet on further downside.
Ouch. Okay, so after that V bounce, where are we now on the 1-hour?
Right now it's consolidating, just moving sideways in a really tight band, basically between $96,500 and $97,500.
And the volume during this tight sideways movement, that's important, you said.
Absolutely critical. The article notes that volume has been declining during this consolidation. That often hints at a bigger move breakout could be coming soon, like the market's coiling up, waiting for direction. A surge in volume will likely signal which way it breaks.
So based on this super short-term view, what's the more, let's say, aggressive play?
Well, the analysis lays out an aggressive strategy, potentially buying if, and it's a big if, there's a confirmed breakout above $97,500. But the key is confirmation. You need to see strong volume coming in with that breakout. Can't just be a weak poke above.
And if that happens, the target.
Initial targets would then be in the $99,000 to $100,000 zone. But they also stress using a sensible stop loss, maybe just below $96,000, to manage the risk if it turns out to be a false breakout.
Okay, price, volume, patterns, checked. Now these oscillators, you mentioned they're a bit mixed. What exactly are they telling us or not telling us?
Yeah, they're not screaming one thing right now.
Mhm.
Overall, the oscillator data is pretty neutral. Suggests the market's kind of balanced, maybe leaning slightly bullish, but not decisively.
Which specific ones are neutral?
Things like the RSI, Relative Strength Index, the Stochastic, the
Yeah.
CCI Commodity Channel Index, ADX, Average Directional Index, all coming back neutral. Not overbought, not oversold, just in the middle.
So not much help on their own right now for direction.
Not strong directional signals, no. But there are a couple that are leaning bullish.
Which ones?
The Awesome Oscillator and the MCD, Moving Average Divergence, they're both actually flashing buy signals, suggesting some underlying upper momentum might still be building.
Okay, but there was one pointing the other way.
Right. The momentum indicator itself is actually signaling sell. So that adds a little bit of caution to the mix.
So a really mixed bag from the oscillators.
Exactly. And that really underscores why looking for that volume confirmation we keep mentioning is so important. You can't just rely on these alone when they're sending different messages.
Makes perfect sense. Okay, oscillators are indecisive. What about moving averages? They usually give a smoother, longer-term view of the trend, right?
They do. And here the picture is, well, much clearer and pretty bullish.
Oh.
Yeah, the analysis states pretty plainly that basically all the major moving averages are signaling buy. Short-term, medium-term, long-term.
All of them, like the EMAs and the SMAs.
Yep. Both the exponential moving averages, which react quicker to price changes, and the simple moving averages across all the standard periods, 10, 20, 30, 50, 100, even the 200-period ones, all pointing upwards.
Wow. Okay. That sounds like pretty strong agreement across the board.
It really is. It strongly reinforces that idea of a solid bullish structure underneath all the short-term noise. Both near-term and longer-term perspectives look aligned according to the moving averages.
But still, the analysis cautions about watching volume and resistance.
Absolutely. Even with strong moving average support, that $97,500 resistance is the immediate hurdle. So the advice remains, monitor volume closely as price approaches that level. Need confirmation that buyers are strong enough to push through.
Okay, let's try and wrap this all together then. We've got strong signals, some mixed signals. What's the core argument for the bulls? Why might it keep going up?
The bull case fundamentally leans on those very consistent buy signals from all those moving averages. Plus, that clear breakout we saw on the daily chart, getting out of that consolidation zone. And the volume, while meeting confirmation now, was supportive on the way up. So the argument is, if Bitcoin can punch through $97,500 with real conviction, with strong volume, then the path to $100 K looks a lot more achievable.
Right. And the flip side, the bear case. What are the biggest risks or reasons it might fail here?
The bear argument really centers on that critical $97,500 resistance level. It's a major test. And those mixed signals from the oscillators, they hint that maybe the upward momentum is getting a bit tired. Exhaustion could be setting in.
So if it hits that wall and bounces off.
Yeah, if it tries to break $97,500 and fails, especially if the volume is weak on the attempt, that could definitely trigger a reversal. We could see it head back down towards that $94,000, maybe even $92,000 support zone, and potentially a deeper correction could follow.
Okay, so summing up, Bitcoin showing definite bullish signs, especially looking at the trend and that recent breakout, but it's right up against a significant wall at $97,500. And the oscillators aren't giving a clear green light, reminding us it's not a guaranteed path. It really feels like it all comes down to volume at that resistance level.
That's pretty much the crux of it, based on this analysis, and it feels like a pivot point. What happens at $97,500? And crucially, how much trading volume accompanies that move will likely tell us a lot about the next major leg, whichever direction that might be.
All right, so here's something for you, the listener, to chew on. We've laid out the bullish signals, the strong trend, but also this major resistance and the potential for a pullback. What factors do you think will be the absolute decider? What's going to tip the scales for Bitcoin hitting or missing that $100,000 mark? Definitely something to watch closely.